Hi, my name is David McLean. I'm primarily a 3D artist, but I love to draw. It's my hope that I can convey some useful tidbits of information through this exercise. Thanks for joining me today. I wanted to present an image that I did this week for the Illustration Friday Challenge. If you're not familiar with Illustration Friday, I highly recommend you check out the website. Just go to illustrationfriday.com. There's a new theme every week. Now, for this illustration, the theme this week was diary. I had the hardest time coming up with an idea, so when I stumbled across this old doodle in my sketchbook, the Lord of the Sith playing a violin, I couldn't resist exploring his more sensitive side. So I thumbnailed this, blew it up to 11 by 17, and inked it. Now, once my inks are done, I scan them in using an Epson 11 by 17 scanner and outline the entire image and fill the primary objects with whatever their base color is going to be. In comics art, they call this flatting. Here, I've filled Vader with a nice dark three-quarter tone gray. It's going to be his base color overall, and his instrument with kind of a dark orange. Now, once those colors are laid in, I try to work big. You'll see me jumping in here some, but I try to stay out wide and loose just to build shape and kind of model to get some volume to the character. I'm painting primarily with a set of custom brushes that I got from a friend of mine, Chris Oatley of chrisoatley.com. If you're not familiar with him, I highly recommend his site. He does a weekly art cast. It's really inspirational and educational as well. It's great for artists. So I'm using his brushes and just going in. And at this point, I'm only working with two colors, dark gray on a multiply layer and a light gray on an overlay or a screen layer. You saw me just a second ago. I popped out and I grabbed an image of a leather glove because it's always good to have reference. I think I know what leather gloves look like, but until you look at a photo reference, you don't really know. Of course, you saw me there grab some images of Vader himself. Again, it's one thing to remember, it's another to have reference of things. And you know, as an artist, you should never be afraid to use reference. I know a lot of old timers that for years kept files just chock full of old images, tear sheets, and cutouts that they'd done for magazines of different things. And for stuff just like this, you know, when you've got to render a glove for a job, you can make it up. But if you can pull a reference and match what really happens in the world, not photographically, but the feel of it, your illustration is going to go a lot further. Now, once the overall image is locked in and the general shapes are modeled, starts to get some volume, then I go in and I start adding more details and highlights, again, working with primary colors. Now, in this particular case, I normally work with a lot more colors, but in the end, I was going to bring some of the background through, so I tried to keep it pretty monochromatic, with the exception, you know, of some of the buttons on his chest, and then obviously his violin there. Highlights are really important when working with dark like this. This is such a dark image, and there's so much black that really any little highlight that you put on it is going to bring out detail and draw your eye to it. You'll see me in a little bit. Once some of the detail is in here, I go in and I start trying to pull out highlights and places that I want the viewer to focus primarily, which you'll see is the face, the chest, and that front forearm up there. Here I'm adding a few reflected colors in the face and adding some complementary colors to my shadows. That's always nice. I usually like to paint purple into my shadows, but painting a complement to a shadow, a complement of the color, really adds a dimension and a level of interest to it. Here's a good example where I'm using a reference for color and the feel of the violin. Again, we're not trying to reproduce it photographically, but we are trying to get a feel. You know, good illustration is not about reproducing the real, it's about capturing the feeling of an item. So you see here me shining up his chest plate a little bit. Again, something I wouldn't have thought of without looking at some references I was working on this painting. And here I am pulling out those places that I want to draw your eye to in the image, secondary after the violin, which is quite obviously the brightest and most prominent element in the whole image. So adding just a few more final details. Now, as I said, the theme here was diary. So I wrote out a false diary entry for Anakin and then dropped it into the background there Using channels, I load it as a selection, and then I use that selection as a curve. That allows me to pull it out and kind of experiment with how light or dark it is, keeping the color true. I want it to be subtle, not overpowering, but more about the feeling of the image. So I really hope you enjoyed this image. I had a ball making it. Please stop by my website, www.studiomiguel.com. I have lots of work there. It's things I do on a day-to-day basis. You can see more of my analog work, traditional cartooning at my blog, which I try to update regularly, every day if possible, at least a couple of times a week, with some new drawing, a sketchbook page, or some kind of an image. And you can find that at www.dmcclain.com. That's DMCCLAIN. Please leave a comment, start a conversation, let me know what you thought about the image. Or if you're the Twittery type, you can find me on there at Studio Miguel. Until next time, may the road always rise to meet your foot, may the sun always shine upon your back, and may the rain fall softly upon your crops.